When you think about politically in Jesus' time, what was happening? What was happening? When you think about politically in Jesus' time, it was kind of like a period when actually because of the Roman government, people, majorly the under the Roman Empire, the countries or the cities or the people, they were actually booming. They were like they were experiencing development in all the areas, in all the areas, socio-political and economic areas. But yet we see that this government, this government hates. You can see the Bible again and again talks about the political heads, kings, and especially the Roman on top. The Roman government was ruthless in actually in advocating or in imposing what they want to actually do in order to gain something out of the people. And you really see Matthew 9:36 talks about the leaders, the shepherds at that time, right? When Jesus says, when he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. They were harassed and helpless, sheep without shepherd. They had shepherds, but then these shepherds were not actually acting out like a shepherd who would protect them and who would lead them, who would provide for their needs. All right? And that's why Matthew actually takes this strong word saying they were harassing people, right? And the people were helpless. They were helpless. They were unprotected. So really it shows that, they had no compassion for especially people, those who were suffering, those who were really those who had nothing in their life. So it really shows that even though they had this strong government, but then the people had no leadership. Like they were leaderless and they were helpless. Right? And then, it's going back. Okay. And then now this political politics actually tied and directly affects the economy of that time as well. And in Matthew 23:4, you hear these words when Jesus says they make strict rules, which means tie up heavy loads, burdens that are hard to carry, and try to force people to obey them, put them on people's shoulders, right? Which means, but they are unwilling to help those who struggle under the weight of their rules. They don't lift a finger to move them with their finger. So there is, in parentheses, you will see it's describing what kind of religious systems they were facing and they had in those times as well, right? So you see that in New Testament, when you read, every time you see thousands of people following Jesus Christ who were poor, right? Who were some kind of carrying disease in their bodies. Thousands of people were actually hurling and then following Jesus, because then they thought that if this person can heal, if this person can provide, then this person must be the Messiah. This person can be the king and can actually free us from the oppression, the harassment that we are facing in our lives. You see that economically, people were actually, they were harassed as well. They were not doing well. And by the way, most of the people, they were farmers. They were lay people, right? We hear a lot about the farmers, the shepherds, and all of that in the New Testament stories. So what happens is that this ruthless government, this system, this political system that actually favors only for themselves, tying up with this economy that favors their big agenda. And then what was their big agenda? It was just that the Romans were to, they lay a heavy tax upon people so that they can, with their heavy taxes, can actually boost their military powers. Right? And then they would organize a lot of campaigns to actually collect those money from people so that they could actually build bridges and then expand the Roman territory into all the Mediterranean world. Now you see, in all of these things, the government And then the politics and the policies that they actually produced, they actually issued, was not working for the favor of the common people, especially the poor, those who did not have. We call it like haves and haves not, right? It only favored the rich, politically powerful, politically elite, right? It only favored those who had already money in their pockets. Now for poor people, it was not working for them. It was even more working for worse for them. And then on top of that, you can see that this economic tying with the religious system is working together to now even, what do you call that? Just as we read that passage, that Jesus said that this economy, this religious system, this political system was instead of helping people, it had become a burden for people to carry on their backs. Right? Now you see in the pyramid here that if you put the Roman government, its military system or its political system on the top, then it goes down. Religious leaders, political heads, rich people, right? The elites, they were there under that system, somehow enjoying their lives, enjoying their system, enjoying from their positions. And then on the third, you can see common people, poor shepherds, right? And the large people made up out of this percentage, like who were common people, poor people, shepherds, right? And then even below that, you can see women, servants, and slaves. Like oftentimes, like slaves and women or children, they looked down by the society. They did not have much power. Arguably, I mean, like the rich woman had power, but then generally, like women, they could not really do anything much, unlike our society today, right? So it was different then. The women had less voice, and then now even under that, you can see slaves had nothing, no identity. They couldn't even speak. Like if they were killed by their masters, nobody could say anything, right? They had no identity, right? So you see in this system how you see that the poor shepherds. Now, when you look at the birth of Jesus, the story, the good news comes to the shepherds, right? The good news comes to these people, those who are in a very lowly state. And then they cry out, they sing. Mary sings and makes a song saying, God, you have come to a person like who is humble instead. Like in this humble again mean like very destitute. Like there is nothing that I can hold to. There is no hope and future for my life. But then God, your good news have come to us to alleviate us from this situation. So you can see that in this context, the good news of Jesus Christ breaks free. Now, again, I was just saying, all the political system, economic, and then that boils down to the segregated social life. What does that mean? It just really affects the social life. It affected the social life. And in the social life, how people were doing, lepers, right? Diseased people were always outcasts. They were not allowed to come even near to the temple, right? Now, temple was designed, built to heal people, to relieve people from their circumstances. But what happens is just like in synagogues, people, those who were blind, those who were having some disease in their bodies, that they were not allowed in the temple. See, the women were not like. So what you see is like you see segregated society, and like the society had this outcast system who would readily outcast people, those who were suffering in their lives. You see there is this story of like Luke 8:43-48, woman with bleeding sickness. She was not able to, she could not touch anyone, because if she would touch, that she would instantly make that person unclean. And therefore, if she makes that person unclean, then she will be stoned to death. Therefore, she fears, and that's why she thinks that if I touch even the edge of the cloak, the edge of the cloak of Jesus' cloth, then I will be healed. So she comes hiding from behind. Now you see that in this system, how this system worked only for those who are well off, those who were actually doing well in their lives. But the disease, but the outcast, poor people, those who were harassed, they were kept they could not really see any hope. They could not really get out of that bondage, get out of that struggles. Samaritans, Romans were considered as Gentiles. Thus, they were segregated from the religious system as well, right? You see that in the narrative. Children were looked down constantly. Now, we actually welcome children. We talk about children. We talk about parenting in our modern times. But then children were looked down constantly. They were thought as like they cannot contribute any big time, anything in the society. Therefore, like disciples say, like, just get out of here in this place. Servants and slaves, I talked about it. Now you see this society is greatly segregated, greatly suffering from the ill in the society. You see that this society is really divided, divided between the haves, those who are rich, those are powerful, and then those who do not have it in their lives. And I really thank God, because now we get to understand that this good news of Jesus Christ, came to such a time that when actually they were crying out for Hosanna, for Messiah. God came to them and dwelt amongst them. It makes sense when we read this passage, because Jesus, he himself became one of these people. He dwelt amongst the people's sinfulness, and he went through that suffering that they were facing in their lives. Luke 2:10, in this context, that angel breaks this message. And the angel said to them, "Fear not, for behold, I bring you good news of great joy that will be for all the people." Fear not, for behold, I will bring you good news of great joy that will be for all the people. And that is, and there could be many more, but then I think basically God brings this good news to the people when they were suffering in every spheres of their lives. I don't know what about you, right? In Hong Kong, what are we at right now? Are we suffering politically? Are we suffering in our social life? Are we suffering economically? I see like we have gone through pandemic, but then I think we are suffering in many of these areas, right? And that has affected us directly or indirectly. Even with the expansion plans, as we were reaching out to donors and all of that, I see a big decrease in giving. I see a lot of partly because a lot of the people have moved out from Hong Kong. And I see people are struggling with their economy because of the works, and then because of a lot of the migration happening, the political shiftment, right? So we see that, and sometimes we don't realize that we are affected by these things. People are working more than they should be working. They're working more hours. They're adding up more hours to actually cover their loss, from pandemic or whatever, right? So. And we see less people in the church. Why? It's partly because everyone is, like, so many people are working on Sundays as well to cover up their hours. When you talk about values of social values and all of that, people are not less interested, because then they're only thinking about money. They're thinking about securing their future. Therefore, now indirectly, this system actually drives people to do something in their lives. And then now, as Christians, as people of God, how can we think creatively to actually bring the good news to this context, in even the context of Hong Kong, right? In what ways you can also ask God, Lord, I myself want to allocate my time. I want to actually give my tithes to you of my time as well. I know that I have these challenges, but then, God, I want to be in your presence, because that's where we actually gain our strength. That's where the joy comes from, us being in the presence of God. And right, we see that when we are actually seeking after the kingdom of God, Jesus says that then all these things will be added unto you, right? So this kingdom, this polity, how can we teach ourselves? How can we all ourselves experience that and actually then bring this kingdom to this into the kingdom of world, right? Now the question was that, to what kind of king that Jesus would become? Because then Jesus would be born and he will save his people from their sins. But what kind of person he will be, right? What kind of king he will be? Isaiah 9:6, it says, "For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." He'll be called Wonderful Counselor. Just that first word. He will counsel. He will give comfort to people. You know, the number one thing that we look for from all our gains, you work hard. Why? Because you're looking for comfort. You're looking for comfort life. You're looking for someone's, like, you know, hopefully that your life will be comforted. Like you will have a comfort life for your family and for others as well, right? Now, in the good news, in the parcel, in the package, what was there and what kind of king this person would be, when they asked these questions, then the Isaiah had foretold them like, hey, this person will actually bring comfort to you and to your soul. He will comfort you. He will comfort you more than anything. More than anything, you know, in our lives, if we are going through these problems, if we're going through these challenges in our lives, who can give comfort to you than a person, than a friend who sits beside you and listens to you so deeply, to your pain, to your sorrow? Jesus is the one who actually comforts your soul, who actually comforts you. He understands you, right? So he is that person like who consoles you. He's a wonderful counselor and mighty God. He is powerful God. And I think this mighty God talks to me directly, because then, you know, I need to rely on him more than myself, because his power is beyond my powers, right? That I want to believe in the miracles that God actually can do beyond what I can and what we believe. So we need, each one of us, we need that mighty God. We need that mighty God, that he actually is able to do things beyond our capacity, beyond our ability. He will be everlasting Father. He'll be the Father for us. He'll be a Father for each one of us. I know that Jesus says, like, you know, I will not leave you orphans. And we have heard many times that it has been said in Hong Kong that the young generation feels like they're orphans. There is no one to actually to look after them. We feel somehow there is this like void in our hearts that, you know, that we are desiring something that nothing actually can satisfy you. Maybe you go out of this place, then maybe you will find that comfort in your soul, in your heart. Maybe you feel, maybe you'll experience that the fatherless will go away from your life, right? So every one of us, we are, in some ways, we are like orphans looking for that fatherly love in our lives. And then here you see, in this good news, you see that this Father God brings that comfort, that he will be your Father and the Prince of Peace. Now in the story of Jesus' birth, what you see is that this is something that really speaks to me, that God would do this not in a ways that we are familiar with, right? God would bring and reveal himself in a ways that is non-conventional, in a non-conventional way. Like God makes, like God just chooses Mary, a Virgin Mary, to bear a child, Jesus, right? God takes, like a lowly place in a manger, right? God takes, there are so many ways that God sends angels to speak, to speak the words and the messages. There are so many ways that you see, like, okay, this is not something that I actually think that it is how it should be, right? And there are so many ways that God uses, which is so different than the way we actually are familiar with working. That our plans, the way we are familiar with, the way we plan things, right? In Isaiah 55:8-9, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. So you will encounter that God's ways are not our ways. You see that happen. And then the question is that will you be willing to accept that? Will you allow yourself to God to reveal? Will you allow yourself God to reveal his ways to you, show you that he is mighty God, he's a comforter, he's a Prince of Peace, he's a Father, in a ways that is not the way you have thought that God would appear to you, right? In a non-conventional way. Maybe you have not planned that way, but then God is actually now revealing you in a ways that you are not familiar with. That it is not how you used to, how you used to do things, or how God, even like for you to know that how God used to work in your lives. Finally, there is this word that actually breaks out against the fear. Angel says to Zechariah and Elizabeth, Zechariah particularly, do not fear. Do not be afraid. An angel comes to Mary, a young woman, do not be afraid. An angel comes to shepherd, do not be afraid. Now, I'm just sharing this overview, but even within these passages, what I hear is that God comes to Zechariah, an old man, a minister, a priest, right? And he says, do not be afraid, right? And then I was just thinking, like, I resonated with Zechariah because I'm a priest. I'm a man. I'm a father of the house. Now, what could be my fears that as a man, as a priest, that I fear in my life the most, right? What could be those fears that I'm wrestling in my life? Fear of losing maybe face, fear of losing my plans, fear of losing something, fear of losing people. What could be that fear that as a minister I face, that I've been facing in my life? And God's message comes to that person saying, like Zechariah, do not be afraid. And he brings the good news to that person, right? As a minister, as a leader of the house or in a society or wherever you are at, what fear are you facing? What fear do you personally have that you cannot share with anyone? I think the good news is for you as well. God is bringing that good news. Hey, do not be afraid. And God is in control. The second one is that God comes to young Mary. She is young. She is young. And what could be a young person's fear, right? More than thinking about security or future partner or future life, right? God comes to that young Mary and brings the good news. Do not be afraid. The first word, do not be afraid. And the third is, he comes to shepherd and says, do not be afraid. What could be their fears, these lowly people, right? What could be their fears? God brings his good news to these people as well, saying, do not be afraid. And this is just the overview that I just shared with you. But even as I end this message over here, today, let us just think about what could be the fears that you have been battling in your life right now. What could be the fear that is sitting right there at the bottom that you are actually, you don't admit, but then you are fearful. And that is actually affecting you deeply from inside and out.